Yo, what's up, everybody? Dr. D. Today we're going to be talking about detox and why you and I and all of us are being poisoned little by little every day. I said I, but I'm really trying to avoid this. And how, even though, yeah, sure, we're being poisoned day by day by the environmental factors around us, but what we can do to really mitigate this, okay? And there's some cool stuff that we can do on our day-to-day lives, okay? For our family, for our kids, and honestly, take this topic seriously because this is something pretty bad. We're gonna be talking about cytotoxins, heavy metals, toxic halides, how these things are in the environment and they're hurting us. Since World War II, more than 80,000 chemicals have been put into our environment. There's studies showing that even babies are born with more than 200 toxic chemicals in their bloodstream. These studies are done based on their umbilical cords. I mean, these babies are just born. You take them out, you study them, and there's toxic chemicals inside of them. And these aren't new studies, these are old studies, all right? So it's really important to understand what's going on with our environment because then all of a sudden you're not feeling good, you're anxious, you're moody, or you're tired, you're depressed, or something like that. And then you go to the doctor, and then the doctor, and again, I went to traditional medical school. We're really not taught these things, this more holistic approach in school, but then you go to the doctor, and the doctor, with all his good intentions, then gives you more chemicals to treat chemicals. So it's getting pretty bad. Back in the day, we used to be worried about infections, right? Infections was the big thing, and people would die with the bubonic plague and things like that, and scarlet fever, and but nowadays what we're worried about is our environment. Our environment is definitely something that's causing a lot of problems, and inside our environment there's a lot of toxicity, that we need to take care of. All right, so very, very important we understand that. But I don't want you guys to despair because I'm going to give you guys a lot of tips and tricks today how you can detox yourself and your family, right? You see nowadays too, for example, kids suffering with one of the 4A's, asthma, allergies, autism, or ADHD, for example, right? And I don't really like to say ADHD is a thing, but yeah, the kids are having a harder time to pay attention to things, right? And the answer, in my humble opinion, is not giving amphetamines, because that's what a lot of these medications are. They're amphetamines, right? And there's no long-term trial studies on these, the 50, 60, 70 years, 100 years of what giving a population of amphetamines, what that's going to equal, right? So I want you guys to pay attention today, please, to really understand or just be aware. Maybe this is just first time hearing about these things, just to raise awareness of what's going on in our environment, okay? And how to live a longer, healthier, happy life with more abundance. And there are studies in regards to this because blue zones are around. There are blue zones, which are communities where people live longer lives with more health span and lifespan, and they consist, all of them, of eating less processed foods, less toxins, etc. So those blue zones are Okinawa, Japan, Sardinia, Italy, Costa Rica, in Loma Linda, California, where there's the biggest concentration of Seventh-day Adventists, which is a Christian group, right? So really important that we understand today how to live a toxic-free life and to remove toxins. And what I like to say is stop counting calories and let's start counting chemicals, right? So let's understand some of the toxins that are out there. For example, excitotoxins. What are excitotoxins? Excitotoxins are toxins that are put in our foods, for example, MSG, monosodium glutamate, which really excites you. Monosodium glutamate, when that thing hits your taste buds, it just creates this like, oh, feeling. You feel so good. So when you go to your favorite fast food restaurant, it's safe to say all of them are pretty much all of them are using MSGs. And the problem is when you order that burger or whatever it is, it's not going to say monosodium glutamate. It's going to have some other name. So there's a list of over 30 different names where monosodium glutamate appears in your foods, right? And it's activating a special area in your on your tongue called umami. So you have your sour, your sweet, your bitter in your on your taste buds. So it's areas of your taste buds where you taste different um, flavors of foods. But umami is what's turned on by monosodium glutamate. So once that hits your mouth, it feels so amazing and it creates that addiction, that pleasure, right? And you're turning on a pleasure center, essentially. But it's connected to cancers, it's connected to anxiety, depression. Basically, it's connected to not only mental illness things, but it's also connected to creating long-term disease in your body. So as you're exposed to this monosodium glutamate over and over and over and over, your body starts to not to be able to fight this thing, right? And you can literally produce neurotoxicity from monosodium glutamate. And this is something that's been introduced into our environment not too long ago, right? Remember, I said in the beginning, there's more than 80,000 chemicals since World War II in our environment. I'm not gonna get through not even a little bit of that. And to tell you the truth, I don't even know half of what those chemicals are. And it's becoming really hard to keep up with this. But I will give you guys a little cool solution on, as best as I know, on how to mitigate these problems, okay? So other excitotoxins, you see when you order your foods and it's all colorful and it has all these like, or when you buy foods, your Gatorades or your Skittles or whatever, these candies, they're all colored. Those dyes are very, very, very toxic for you. Like the red 40 and the blues and the yellows, etc. Those dyes are very toxic for you. Again, excitotoxins. So lots of times you have a kid that you don't understand why he's getting sick or why he's so hyper or why he can't pay attention to school, etc. in school, because the problem is you're exciting the daylights out of him with chemicals, right? You're giving him chemicals that get his biology on the RPM side, it gets it on the red, and then you're expecting him to sit down in a calm, serene environment. That's not gonna happen. And then worst of all, I don't wanna go on a tangent here, then we bring in video games that are hyper-stimulating, movies that are hyper-stimulating, etc. And then you give these excitotoxins, and what do you get? You get a kid that's on, his RPM's on the red. And he's not gonna tell you, mommy, I'm not feeling good, or she's not gonna tell you that, but you're gonna see that this kid is not conforming to perhaps standards that little kids should be in, right? And then the problem's not the kid. The problem is the environment that he's in. And remember, that gives us a little bit of leeway into that topic of genetics versus epigenetics. Is it the genes of the kid, or is it the epigenetic makeup of the kid? So what's around him? The environment counts a lot. 70% of your future life is your environment, and 30% is your genes. Remember, the Human Genome Project showed us this. When the Human Genome Project was calculated back around, they finished around, I believe, April 2003, we were able to understand how many genes are inside a human and what is that genome. And listen, this is pretty appalling. A human, well, I'm not going to tell you how many genes a human has first. And I say this many times in our lectures just because it's so important to understand that it's not only in your genes. It's not only in your genes. It's your environment. 1 out of 10 cancers is genetic. The other ones are environmental. And then 70% of cancers are food derived. Stop and think for a second. Stop and think, what are you doing to yourself and to your family? It's your life. You don't have another one. Who cares about money? Who cares about cars? Who cares about whatever it's your health. And I know lots of times we don't care about being healthy. We care about the life that we get, right? We care about sleeping good sex life, making money, etc. But it's your life, brother and sister. It's your family. Think about that for a second. 1 in 10 cancers is genetic, and 70% of cancers are food derived or caused by foods. So think about this for a second. Then when you have your kid and you're giving him a bunch of those excitotoxins, the MSGs and the reds and the blues and all those dyes and the natural flavors, those natural flavors, that's a term, from what I understand, very poorly regulated. It's one of those hazy terms. It's like many times, depending on your jurisdiction, et cetera, when something says it's organic, not 100% of it is organic most of the times. for something to be said that it's organic, only about, depending on where you live here in the US and overseas, etc., but sometimes 25%, 35% of that food needs to be made with an organic substance, and then the rest is still not organic, and then they still put all those chemicals in. So what's the point of buying organic when you have MSG in there? What's the point of buying organic when you have dyes in there? What's the point of buying organic when you have sodium nitrates in there, sodium benzoates? What are those? Those are preservatives for foods. You remember bacon? You know, your bacon that you love in the morning? That stuff is full of sodium nitrates. Those are extremely cancerous for you. Do I eat that stuff? No. Do I eat all the colorings? No. Do I avoid MSGs? I do. And wait a minute, Dr. D, why'd you say avoid? Because it's really hard to catch that guy. That one's really hard because he's ubiquitous. He's all over the place. He's in different foods with different names. And it's sometimes, I mean, you can run into that darn thing and not even know it, you know? So, I mean, and I'll be honest, I don't have all those names memorized. So I really try to live a life where I'm not eating out of packages and boxes, etc. That's number one. And then when you're in the grocery store, if we go to the grocery store nowadays at home, we're going to farms to get our food. But in the grocery store, we shop around the grocery store. We don't go through the middle. Don't do the zigzag in the middle of the grocery store, because that's where the box foods are and the little packages, etc. Try to go around, okay? And this whole thing, eat organic. Is it truly organic? How about the chemicals they're putting in the stuff, right? Or the almond milks with the carrageenan, which is another chemical that's really bad for you, the gum guars. All these things, all these chemicals inside our foods today are poisoning us, are causing our children to have problems. You want to talk about a pandemic? That's a pandemic to me. And here's the thing, it's going to break our healthcare system. It's going to break I honestly believe if we don't do something about this fast, I mean, you're going to see perhaps the day that the S&P 500 starts to tank, because our healthcare system, not even our healthcare system, there's so much disease in our environment. You know, I was reading an article not too long ago that Starbucks spends more on the health of their employees than they actually do on coffee beans, which is about 300 million a year. That's pretty scary if you ask me. That's pretty scary. Where the employees, well, I mean, first of all, kudos to Starbucks, but where the employees are that sick, or we're having to practice that much prevention, which our current prevention model to me is antiquated and isn't working properly, right? So, because what we're doing, we're taking care of our health insurance. You're really taking care of your disease, not your health. It's not health insurance. It should be called disease insurance. But truthfully, that's what it is. Once you get sick, that's when it kicks in. So going off of, a little bit off of excitotoxins, then, we have things in our environment like toxic halides, the fluorides, the chlorines, the bromides, etc., that they're in our waters, they're in a bunch of vaccines, they're in a lot of dental procedures. You have a lot of the mercury, etc. Listen, there's great ways to detox from that too, all right? So one thing that I love for a detox of heavy metals and to chelate some of these heavy metals, and I'm going to start to give you guys now some solutions, would be, for example, Lugol's iodine. Lugol's iodine is wonderful. It's a formula put together by Jean Lugol back in the 1800s, where he used this formula to help balance the thyroid. So it's really good for helping balance the thyroid, really good for detoxifying from heavy metals, really good to even for protecting from radiation. And if you don't believe me, the military gives the troops, when they go into a nuclear fallout area, where places like Chernobyl, where there's a lot of nuclear radioactivity, they give them potassium iodide little capsules, right? If you pick up any survival handbook, and I just remembered, I think I have a survival handbook here somewhere. If you pick up any survival handbook, I could have sworn it was here. I saw it not too long ago. Oh, it is here. Little SAS survival handbook. It's going to talk about using potassium iodide. World's ending, use some iodine, right? So really interesting concept, right? That you even see in the military, etc. So a lot of the facts that I'm bringing to you I'm not making any of this stuff up. You guys go ahead and do some research on it yourselves, right? But another really good book to talk about environmental toxicity is this book right here, Toxic. It's literally called Toxic. It talks about mold toxicity, chemical sensitivities, chronic environmental illness. Really good book by Dr. Neil Nathan. Okay, really, really good book for you guys to check out. I really like this book. Use it as a textbook because it could be heavy. Like so, it talks about hyperbaric chamber, IVIG, really, really good stuff. So, immunoglobulin therapy. So, I want to give you guys today a few pearls. You know, as we talk about like a little bit of those like cytotoxins, talk about toxic halides, which those are pretty ubiquitous too, or even heavy metals like aluminum, cadmium, mercury. These things are found, all the way from baked foods to you name it. And the whole point, I'm not trying to teach you how to spot these things at all, because I honestly stink at it. I stink at it, and it's very. I'm a pretty distracted guy, for the most part. So I just keep certain rules. I need this stuff simple, so I'm going to give it to you guys simple today. So let's talk about how your body detoxifies things. So 60% of things are detoxified through the liver. About 20% of things are detoxified through your kidneys. Okay. Now in the liver, we all have, the first pass and second pass of the liver, et cetera. These things are done through phases. So you have the first phase, which is the biotransformation phase or the bioactivation phase. Then you have the second phase, which is the conjugation phase. And then you have the third phase, which is the elimination phase. Okay, really important. Now, that's how your body gets rid of these things. So, for example, in the first phase, we depend on things like glutathione, zinc, vitamin C, selenium, your B complex, which is so important. Glutathione is getting pretty popular as an agent to clean up things, and the nickname, I've heard of this nickname for it in medicine, which is the universal toxin binder, or things like that. Nature's recycling bin, etc. And it's really good. Glutathione, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful agent for cleaning things up. And even if you're a traditional healthcare practitioner, you studied glutathione. Glutathione was in biochemistry. There's a whole part, and if you take a biochemistry book, there's a whole part on the pathways of glutathione and deficiencies of glutathione, causing issues like G6PD, glucose phosphate dehydrogenase deficiency. When children lack that enzyme, then you have the issues with glutathione, and then there's hemolysis issues, infections issues, and that's when we usually say, antioxidant supplementation will help. So this first phase of the liver is going to depend a lot on nutrients. So here's the little trick. First step, nurture yourself and detoxify yourself. I'm gonna say that again. Nurture yourself and detoxify yourself. And if I may add, nurture yourself with God's pharmacy and detoxify yourself, if that makes sense for you. Because those vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, etc., He put them here. They've been here. Those are not pharmaceutical agents. And I really believe the future of pharmacology lies on our nutrients, our Earth's nutrients, right? And there's beautiful nutrients, and some of them are even hard to get. Like, I'm sure you've heard of the B complex. How about B17? You ever heard of that? How about B18? Wonderful, wonderful nutrients for the body that really, really help to detoxify ourselves. Now, here's the funny part. For example, when you activate, now when you go into the second phase, the conjugation phase, there's proteins, etc. in that phase, most namely one like NRF2, forget the name. But for example, if you take a Tylenol or paracetamol, depending on or acetaminophen, right? Depending on where you are on our planet, sometimes they call it acetaminophen or paracetamol, whatever, Tylenol. And if you take one of those, it stops. It inhibits that phase for a minute, the rhythm of that phase. So, and that's a problem, because if it's going to interfere with one of the phases, then it interferes with the detoxification pathway. So now you see, you put some stuff inside of you, you're not feeling good, and then you take something to take the pain away, or just to help the inflammation, whatever it is, and all of a sudden, now you're interfering with your detoxification pathways, which is not good. You see what I'm saying? So, what can we do, for example, to eliminate some of these things? For example, turmeric. Turmeric, some low-hanging fruit here. Turmeric is really, really, really good to activate, for example, NRF2. What I was telling you guys about the conjugation phase. So, and when you activate that, your body accelerates that detoxification process. And you guys will see, for example, cultures that use a lot of turmeric. I'm sure you've heard of curry, right? India is big on, I mean, they have some type of turmeric-based substance, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They have lower numbers, for examples, of Alzheimer's per capita in the world, etc. So really beneficial for you just to sprinkle some of that stuff over your food. And again, get good quality stuff. All right, it's something I always suggest. I mean, probably don't source it from, big organizations. That's the first thing, organizations that are owned, maybe that you can see them being traded in the stock market, perhaps is not somewhere where you'd want to source something, just because, again, there's big corporations usually will tend to not have the process, the compound as pure as you want it, right? But another really good thing, for example, cilantro. Cilantro is really good to take mercury out of your life. So if you think you've maybe, I don't know, taken too many mercury-containing vaccines, or taking, or you have amalgam in your mouth or something like that, or mercury in your mouth, sorry, and you want to get rid of that mercury, well, a good way to start to detoxify your body, for example, cilantro, you putting a little bit of cilantro on your food every day really helps to detoxify some of these chemicals from your life, okay? Something good for the kids, etc. And do it in small doses, because again, you can, when these things happen, you can start to, the detoxification process, sometimes you'll plummet. When you're detoxifying yourself, you start to put these toxins into your bloodstream. Some of these toxins are deposited in fat, etc. And then you start to bring them into your bloodstream. And if it's in your bloodstream, your body, your immune system will react to it. And lots of times you'll become sick. It's kind of like you get worse before you get better, right? It's actually, there's a name to this. It's called the Yerkes-Hirschmeyer reaction. It's a term commonly used, especially when you give the antibiotics to somebody that has syphilis, and in that case, it's these spirochetes that come into the blood, and then the person starts to react, and it's very classic. But you'll see Yerkes-Hirschmeyer reaction. A German physician, if I'm not mistaken, gave that name, which is the detoxification process. So it's something to be expected. When you're detoxifying yourself, you can get a little worse before you get better. Explained in this book very, very well, Toxic. I really recommend you guys get this book. Something else that's really good for you, saunas. So again, be careful with the wet sauna. I said this in another lecture, because a lot of the wet saunas are treated with chlorine, and then when you breathe in that darn chlorine, the chlorine then displaces the iodine from your thyroid, and then all of a sudden you're having issues of hypothyroidism, etc. Down the line. Again, it's not going to be with one exposure, but especially various exposures, or if you already have a tendency not to have a properly balanced thyroid, or you struggle with your thyroid, I would probably suggest you talk to your healthcare practitioner on avoiding chlorine. But whole point is, so dry saunas and sweat, where you can actually sweat these things out, is very important. Sweating is super, super important to eliminate toxins from your life. Okay, so and then another little tip and trick that I like to use also to help with, especially eliminating toxins that lead to cancers, etc. Cruciferous vegetables, so Brussels sprouts, collard greens, kale, broccolis, etc. They have amazing substances inside of them that help to avoid, to detoxify your body from cancer. So two that I'd like to talk about today would be sulforaphane and DIM, diindolylmethane, DIM. Really, 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 really amazing compounds to help your body detoxify from certain cancers, right? So, and the trick is you can't cook the vegetable too much, okay? I won't get into it today on how to process the vegetables, etc., but you can't cook them too much, or else you lose a little bit of the properties that will help preserve these chemicals that you want inside your veggies. But or you could do proper supplementation. you can supplement with these things. It takes about 2 pounds of broccoli for you to get what's inside one capsule of 200 milligram DIM. Okay, so, and then as we know, the supplement industry is not regulated. So again, this is a variable number. I always prefer to compound, so pharmaceutical, to use a compounding pharmacy where you get this stuff pure. That's what we do at Biohax, but I prefer to get this stuff like, okay, I know this is a compounding pharmacy, this is regulated, and I know I'm getting a really good quality substance, or the pharmacy is regulated, not so much the compound, but I know I'm getting a good quality substance in here. So these agents are really, really good to also help you detoxify from cancers and things like that, okay? Now, what's my trick? I just gave you 4 little things, you know, the turmeric, cilantro. I also spoke to, or 5. I told you guys about Lugol's iodine. I told you guys about saunas. I told you guys about using cruciferous vegetables, or actually the proper supplement. And if you really want to take it to the next level, you go with a compounding pharmacy. You got to talk to your physician about this, but you go with a compounding pharmacy because you need a script, and to get this stuff pure, you can get your Lugol's iodine at a compounding pharmacy, right? Really, really good stuff. But what are you going to do? You're going to keep eating the same way you were eating before? Probably not. So what's the little trick? Like I told you guys, you could go to the grocery store and shop around, but you're still going to be very exposed. You're still going to be very exposed. So what I suggest to you guys is find farmed food. If you guys can, you know, find farmed food, eat as least processed foods as you can. Avoid the processed foods, you know. If you're vegan or vegetarian and you're doing the Beyond Burgers, bad idea. Go see how much chemicals are inside those Beyond Burgers. I'm not telling you not to be vegetarian or vegan. I actually grew up in a vegan community, right? I'm not vegan nowadays, but I grew up in a vegan community. But whole point is, what I'm saying is, avoid the processed foods. I'm not trying to get into the diet war here. Keto and paleo and vegan and vegetarian. I'm not trying to get into that. The whole point today, what I'm telling you guys is avoid the processed foods. Are eggs good for you? Yeah, they're great. But the problem is, chicken's supposed to put 1 egg a day, not the plethora of eggs that they're putting out a day today. So again, those eggs aren't good for you. There's a lot of chemicals in our environment, right? And today I didn't even talk about with you guys about GMOs. That's going to be on another lecture, which that's very connected with, you know, kids having these peanut allergies now. There's peanut allergy all over the place, and the sale of EpiPens are through the roof. And that's going to be our next topic. That I'm definitely going to do a segment on that, a little lecture on that. But it's important to understand that for you to detoxify your life, you need to nurture yourself with good quality substances like your B complexes and your zincs and your seleniums, your vitamin E, your antioxidants, alpha lipoic acids, ubiquinol, right? CoQ10. But after the age of 30, you shouldn't really be using CoQ10 because it doesn't work that well, right? You start losing the activity of the enzyme that converts CoQ10 to ubiquinol. So CoQ10 is actually called ubiquinone. So ubiquinone to ubiquinol, and after the age of 30, that enzyme loses about 5% of its activity every year that goes by. So whole point is, you want to nurture yourself with these really, really good substances for you, and then really, really do your best to try to avoid these processed foods. Eat as clean as you can, chemical free. Stop counting the calories. I mean, count calories. I also count. I'm wearing a Whoop, right? I try to count how many calories. I try not to go over, right? I like to be fit. But count the chemicals in your life. And if I may ask, leave 1 chemical today. Leave 1 thing that you know is full of chemicals. Go down that list of your habits and things that you like to eat or drink or whatever you're exposed to, and leave that 1 chemical. Leave that 1 chemical. I did this last week. I left coffee, and I'm never going to drink that thing again. It's full of chemicals. There's a lot of so-called research saying how caffeine is good for you. No, caffeine's not good for you. It's a stimulant, etc. It's also excitotoxin, just like sugar, right? Sugar turns on your pleasure centers in your brain, just like eight times stronger than cocaine does. 8 times stronger. That's an ultimate excitotoxin, right? So you throw in some caffeine, some sugar, some red 40, some MSG. What are you expecting to live your life like? You expecting to live that life of abundance? No, you're going to live a life of scarcity. You're going to live a life of wired and tired until you're ultimately burned out. And then it can get confused with depression, and you can be put on depression pills, etc. That's not the life you want to live. You want to live a life of abundance. And for you to live a life of abundance, where you're connected to your creator, where you're living the spiritual life that you want to live, where you're living your family life that you want to live, or building the family that you want to have, where you're living the financial life you want to live, where you're able to work more, find the why you would improve your health. Find the why you would clean up your diet, clean up the chemicals in your life. Is it maybe because you just want a bigger bank account? And I say just because for me, I look at everything. I look at abundance. I look at love in my life, the quality of relationships in my life. What will get you to clean up your life today? Just get rid of some chemicals. And listen, if you're really, really, really going to be proactive about this, contact somebody that understands chemical toxicity, that understands how to do blood work in regards to chemicals, to remove chemicals, that understands chelation therapy, that understands micronutrient therapy, and then get data, personalized data in regards to your health, in regards to the chemical environment inside your body, in regards to the nutrients inside your body and what's missing. Because once you start to eliminate these chemicals via a personalized data-driven method where you see your blood and you see the chemicals in there, and when you see also the micronutrients that are missing in your life, and you actually do this for a good 90 days, and where you're using compounded substances from a proper pharmacy, it's more than likely you're going to notice a big difference in you, in the person in front of the mirror. So before you start thinking about competing with other people out there, competing with, if you're a businessman and or a CEO, or you're a super mom, or you're a college student and you're struggling to pay attention, you're competing with you. And for you to compete with you need to give yourself the best resources. The best gasoline needs to be in your tank. So get rid of those excitotoxins today. Get rid of those processed foods. Get rid of those heavy metals, those toxic halides, etc. Because they're competing, you know what? For your brain and for your life. Change your biochemistry, change your biology, and your physiology will change. In this case, we know what came first, if it's the chicken or the egg. In this case, it's your biochemistry. Your biochemistry comes first. If your biochemistry isn't right, your thoughts aren't right. And I'll even tell you, it'll impact your spirit, your spiritual life, and even perhaps your soul. So make the decision today, do something, take massive action. I hope you're not listening to this and not taking a decision. Please, please, please take something away from your life, just something that's hurting you. Remove that one chemical, that one thing that you like to have, that chemical, get rid of it and live a better life, all right? I really love you all. Dr. D, let's go. Let's live a better life. Let's go.